Good morning, student. Today we are going to discuss on Botany paper 2nd, semester 4th, BO 342, Plant Ecology and Biodiversity. And from this paper, we are going to discuss on the chapter 3rd, Environmental Impact Assessment. In last lecture, we already discussed about the different stages of the environmental impact assessment, that is the screening, scoping, then decision, then preparation of the final draft, implementation, decision, then monitoring, implementation of the project. Everything has been discussed in this point, and today we are going to discuss on the next point, that is the from the environmental impact assessment, that is aim and objectives of environmental impact assessment. Whether the environmental impact assessment is done, but what are the aims and objective of the environmental impact assessment? There are different aims and objectives of environmental impact assessment that will influence the choice of methods and the scope of the study. It helps or it affects on the choice of method and the scope of the study. The aim is depends or it dependent on who is the user as well as on the use of the result. Some of these aims and objectives are as follows. First of all, the main aim is the project development. The use of environmental impact assessment is in project development may be regarded as way of avoiding environmental impacts by using environmental impact assessment at as early stage as possible in the development. This is also a way of avoiding costs due to these impacts. That is, before the project development we have the information regarding the projects, so it avoids the cost due to these impacts. This may be used for different projects, that is construction or reconstruction of industrial plants, construction of road, construction of dams, municipal construction of municipal waste, or water purification plants. This project development is regarded as a way of avoiding the environmental impacts by using environmental impact assessment as early as possible in the development. And what happens? The future adverse effects are avoided. The users are to be found in the decision makers in the company, and the performer is usually the project team or consultants. Second point or second objectives of the environmental impact assessment is the development control. Here the environmental impact assessment is a tool for authorities to prevent adverse environmental impact from kind of projects mentioned above. This kind of environmental impact assessment has been introduced in national legislation. The performer may be the authority, but also it may be the task of the performing company. Also here consultant may be used for the work. That is, the development control is nothing but it is the way of license or it is the permit. Here the environmental impact assessment is the tool for authorities to prevent adverse environmental impact from the kind of project mentioned above. This kind of environmental impact assessment has been introduced in national legislation. The performer may be the authority, but also it may be the task of performing the company. Plan development. This environmental impact assessment is a tool for authorities in planning of resources or land use. Infrastructure like road and railway, the utilization of these resources, that is land use or use of infrastructure like road or use of railways. This environmental impact assessment often is called as strategic environmental assessment, that is C. The authority may be performer if the competence is available, else consultants are used. Policy development. Another use of strategic environmental assessment is an policy development where the consequences of policy can be evaluated by government. As an example of government may be evaluate the consequences of promoting a specific type of industry, whatever it may be, as a major primary industry. Also, there the work may be performed internally or by consultants. Hierarchy of environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment is an intrinsically complex multi-dimensional process involving multiple criteria and multiple actors. Multi-criteria method can serve as useful decision aids for carrying out the environmental impact assessment. The use of multi-criteria technique, namely the analytical hierarchy process, for the purpose analytical hierarchy process has the flexibility to combine quantitative and qualitative factors to handle different groups of actors, to combine the opinions expressed by many experts, and can help in stakeholders analysis. Hierarchy of environmental impact assessment. The main shortcoming of the analysis of hierarchy process and some modifications to it to overcome the shortcoming are briefly described. Finally, the use of the analysis hierarchy process is illustrated for a case study involving socio-economic impact assessment. In this case study, analysis hierarchy process has been used for capturing the perceptions of stakeholders on the relative severity of different socio-economic impacts, which will help the authorities to prioritizing their environmental management plan and can also help in allocating the budgets available for mitigating adverse socio-economic impacts. Then, history review of environmental impact assessment. Before the First World War, that is the 1918, the rapid industrialization and urbanization of Western countries was causing rapid loss of natural resources. This continued to the period after the Second World War, giving rise to the number of pollutants increases, quality of life contaminated, and the environmental stress increase. Due to the rapid industrialization, rapid urbanization, as well as increase in population. So, what are the history of environmental impact assessment in developing countries? Up to this situation, environmental impact assessment as a new concept was not readily understood and accepted as a tool in developing countries. That is, the developing countries, those are in progress, they were not accepting, or they are not understood, they were not aware about these environmental impact assessment. Developers, they were against this process because they were realized, they were argued, they were against, that is, they have their misinformation was in their mind, and this misinformation was that it was anti-development. That is, this environmental impact assessment, they analyze the projects, and analyzing the project is nothing but the developer says that this is the anti-development because laws and policies supporting it detected that land development causing negative impacts should be discontinued. In a nutshell, environmental impact assessment was considered just another bureaucratic stumbling block in the path of development. That is, it is the environmental impact assessment was considered as the resistant, or it was considered as the speed breaker for the path of the development. Then, history of environmental impact assessment in developing country again. Secondly, it was conceived a sinister means by which industrialized nations, instead to keep developing countries from breaking the vicious cycle of poverty. Thirdly, the expert in the developing countries were foreigners who were viewed as agents of colonization. The need of environmental impact assessments has become increasingly important and is now a statutory requirement in many developing countries. That is, it becomes statutory, it becomes mandatory for in many developing countries. Historically, the choice of new projects was primarily based on one, economic viability. Today, a second and third choice criteria, environmental and social impact, have become a strong yardstick. That is, in the project, when primarily the project was developed, it was directly considered according to the economy. But now, in addition to the economy, the criteria is considered, that is, the developer must consider firstly the economy, but secondly he must consider the environment, social impact, social effect, and it becomes very strong today. Hence, the triple bottom line approach, that is economic, environment and social, to project viability. History of environmental impact assessment in India. The Indian experience with environmental impact assessment began over 20 years back. It started in 1976 to 77 when the Planning Commission asked the Department of Science and Technology to examine the river valley projects from an environmental angles. That is, in India, such environmental impact assessment was not working. But from 1976 to 77, the Planning Commission started to examine, or they asked to examine the projects, and the agency was appointed, and this agency was the Department of Science and Technology, that is DST. And this DST firstly examined the river valley projects, and laterally the all projects were examined by the view of environment instead of the view of economy. This was subsequently extended to cover those projects which required the approval of the Public Investment Board. Till 1994, environmental clearances from the central government was an administrative decision and lacked legislative support. On 27 January 1994, the Union Minister of Environment and Forest, that is Government of India, that is the MEF, that is Minister of Environment and Forest, Government of India, under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, promulgated an environmental impact assessment notification making environmental clearance mandatory for expansion or modernization of any activity or for setting up new project listed in schedule. Thank you very much. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.